Come on. 2, 3.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, April 7th, 2022. And our top story today, we're talking nutrition. Are carbohydrates the number one enemy? Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Sandy Hindi. She's a registered nutritionist and dietitian with Nutrition Healthworks. Sandy, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us again on the program this morning.
Good morning. Yeah, thank you for having me again. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you. And today I love rice and bread. I used to be a pretzel addict. Carbohydrates, they're not the enemy that people make them out to be. We actually need them, Sandy.
Yes. So I can't tell you how many times I see people and say, like, I'm cutting down my carbs, I'm not eating any, and I'm still not losing weight, or them just thinking that it's just bad for them. So it's definitely something that we hear all the time. Even within my family, I feel like I have to educate my own family sometimes that carbs are good for you. And if we look at like a Mediterranean diet, 45% of our calories should be coming from carbohydrates. And the reason for that is because it's our main source of energy for our body. We think our brains function on glucose. So if we're not fueling our body correctly, we tend to be kind of tired all the time. We're not getting that energy that we need. The thing that matters most is the types of carbohydrates that we're consuming, right? So
yeah, I was going to ask you. I mean, there are, I don't know, good or better carbohydrates than others. We're going to talk about celiac disease in the next segment, but let's just focus on some good carbohydrates, because I have read in numerous places, things like white rice, white bread. No, we don't need them, or we shouldn't have them. But what are some good carbs that, in your list as a dietitian, a registered, dietitian and nutritionist, you're telling clients that they should be eating?
Yeah, definitely. So when you said the white breads and white rice, those are things we want to limit, right? If we completely eliminate it out of our diet, it's kind of difficult to do. But it's something we want to limit because they're simple carbohydrates. So when we mean simple carbohydrates, they turn into sugar a lot more quicker, than a complex carb. And when you look at complex carb, they usually have a little bit more fiber to them. So we're thinking about whole grain, right? Breads and pasta, and looking for brown rice. And when we look at vegetables, even we consider potatoes, carrots, peas, corn. Those are all a little bit more of the complex carbohydrates that we're looking at. Oatmeal, I always tell people, eat your oatmeals, beans, legumes, those are all high in carbs too, but there are also other benefits to it. So those take a little bit longer to digest. They're higher in fiber, which is good for gut health and heart health. So we always recommend a higher in complex carbohydrate diet.
Yeah, really good information. And if you're having carbs, just going back to that, carbs are not your enemy. You talk about brain function, being able to be cognitively functioning, avoiding things like Alzheimer's and dementia later in life, but also eliminating that brain fog. It's about portion control, right? Because there are 4 calories per gram for both protein and carbs. So it's really how much you consume, Sandy. We just need to watch. Maybe it's a palm, right? They used to tell us that like the palm was the portion that we should be consuming.
Yeah, that's such a great point. So when I talk to my clients, I talk to them about the balanced plate method. So it's a little bit easier to kind of think about. So we talk about having your full plate, half of it being your fruits and vegetables, a quarter of it being your carbs, and a quarter being your protein. So we're definitely having like the equal amounts of carb to protein. And like you said, it is the same. So 1 gram of protein and 1 gram of carb equals 4 calories. But then we look at fat tends to have higher, it's 9 calories per gram. But it's definitely portion control. 100%. And that comes to everything, right? We talk about moderation in everything. So even protein, people think, oh, I need so much protein in my diet, but our bodies really can't process that much protein. So the more you eat it, the more work you're putting your kidneys through. And then we tend to pee out the rest. So you're not really going to be using all of it. So everything definitely needs to be in moderation and portioning it out.
Yeah, and everything in life needs to be moderation. I mean, you can't work out all day long. It's not a benefit. You can't drive a car all day long, even no matter how much, or work on a car no matter how much you like it. You've got to have that balance. Sandy, last question, and this is less of a carbohydrate question and more of a, we've all noticed, I think you and I have talked about this in a previous episode, inflation continues to hit Americans' wallets in the form of higher food prices and gasoline prices. Among your clients, is this something that you're hearing like, hey, I want to be healthy, but it's just too expensive? And I just want you to remind viewers that they can get healthy foods in the frozen food section and other places too.
Yeah, I always say I'm a big advocate of frozen fruit and vegetables. So it is definitely something I'm hearing. So it's definitely a concern for a lot of people. I'd say, like, when you're looking at carbohydrates, you can even, like I said, going to beans, and for protein too, going to beans and getting canned beans or dried beans, and going to the frozen section for your produce too. Definitely there's nothing wrong with that. More nutritious, you're going to get a lot out of it. And you get a better bang for your buck, and it lasts longer. It can be in your freezer for a while. So I always tell people, you don't have an excuse. So they tell me like, oh, like I don't eat my vegetables each day because I tend to run out and I don't have anything. I'm like, well, then have your stash of frozen vegetables in the freezer. So if the day that you don't have anything, you have something to grab. So it's always like my little trick for them. Yeah,
there are no excuses here. You can be creative in terms of eating your diet. You can make smoothies. You can steam the vegetables. You can blanch them. There's lots of things you can do. You just got to try. Sandy, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about celiac disease. There are a lot of people who are diagnosed with this autoimmune disease. We'll talk about what kind of diet you need. When we come back, you're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking this morning to Sandy Hindy. She's a registered nutritionist and dietitian with Nutrition Healthworks. Sandy, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy coming and talking to you.
Yeah, it's fun, and I hope people are able to take away some really good ideas. You know, whether it's saving for retirement or anything else, it's about incremental change. You don't have to make sweeping changes right away, and hopefully this type of information really helps people. Sandy, let's talk about celiac disease. And as I went to commercial break, I talked about how this is an autoimmune disease really based off of gluten. So your consumption of gluten triggers some autoimmune response that can have negative impact on your body. Are you seeing more of your clients being diagnosed with this? Maybe they weren't aware that they had a gluten intolerance. Maybe they liked gluten as part of their diet, and all of a sudden things changed.
Yeah, I definitely do see a lot of patients with celiac disease. It's an interesting thing, right? So it's something you have to kind of avoid, like you said, avoiding gluten. And we'll find gluten in barley, rye, and wheat. So it's something that they kind of have to avoid. And even little amounts of it sometimes can trigger an autoimmune reaction. And so kind of what happens is it happens in their small intestines. So if they're consuming gluten, their body is trying to defend itself. It looks at gluten as the enemy, right? So it causes inflammation. And in our intestines, we have these things called villi that kind of help with the absorptions of nutrients. So they kind of look like fingers, and they kind of absorb everything and help us to absorb those nutrients. So over time, if we continue to consume gluten and you have this autoimmune reaction, you tend to smooth out those villi. So the absorption of nutrients becomes very limited and difficult. So there's chances of a lot of problems later on in the future with malabsorption and not getting the nutrients that you need.
And as you said, I mean, people can become violently ill. I know people within my family who are now gluten intolerant and become violently ill. Just to remind people, what are the types, you mentioned, I think, grains, but what are the types of things that people would find in their pantry or in the refrigerator that would have gluten in them?
Yeah, so definitely wanting to stay away from breads unless it's labeled gluten-free. So anything with bread, any wheat crackers, there's just a lot of things that might have it. Sometimes even some sauces might have wheat in it. So reading the label is a very important thing when you have celiac disease or gluten intolerance. And always just see if it contains wheat, put it aside and definitely try to avoid it. And looking for things that say gluten-free on it. But this also definitely doesn't limit your food intake. Nowadays, we're so lucky that we're in a society that provides us with so many options. Like there's so many gluten-free breads and pastas and everything out there that you don't really feel restricted. It can come challenging when you're going to a friend's house and they don't know that you're gluten intolerant. And that's the way, like, that communication is very important to let people know, hey, I can't consume gluten, and they can find alternatives for it.
And you mentioned friends' houses or families' houses, but restaurants are now set up to handle gluten intolerance. So, Sandy, when I'm ordering something, I'm with a gluten intolerant person. He or she, they need to speak up to the server and say, hey, you know, I have a gluten intolerance. Please make sure my food is gluten free. Most restaurants are set up for this.
Yeah, definitely. I'm seeing more and more so when the waiter is coming to our table and asking, hey, is there any allergies that we should be aware of? I'm finding that more common to see that question being asked, which is such a great thing for them just to be aware of that. And yeah, you'll go to places now and you'll always see like the GF, so gluten-free or vegan or vegetarian. So there is those options there, and they're making it a little bit more easier for people who have these diseases and complications to go out and eat and feel comfortable to do so.
Yeah, and they want to do the right thing because they don't want anyone to get violently sick, because those people will write a negative review and really could hurt business. So there's a vested interest there of making sure that they serve the customer, being very open and transparent. Sandy, last question here. the types of foods. We can't have gluten bread, gluten wheat and things like that, but there are fruits and vegetables and poultry and meat that we can consume because that, to my knowledge, doesn't have gluten in it.
Yeah, so definitely eat as much fruits and vegetables as you want. There's definitely no limitations to that. No limitations to any meat, poultry. Those definitely don't have any reactions to gluten at all because they're gluten free. Even when it comes to dairy products, eggs too. But there is definitely a lot of people who are lactose intolerant. So I always tell them, just get your almond milk. You're fine. You'll be able to use that as well. So there definitely is a variety of food, and definitely we want you to be able to consume all those things. And like I mentioned, there's so many options now out there of gluten-free pastas and everything that you might feel like you're not able to consume. And even oats. So people tend to kind of avoid oats when they're gluten-free, but they are naturally gluten-free unless they're made in a facility where there might be some wheat contamination. So always making sure with your oats it says gluten-free on it, and you could be able to consume that with no issues.
And you would see this, by the way, you would see this on the nutritional labels, right? I mean, you would see the makeup, it would say no gluten, yada, yada, yada. That's where you should be looking, is that correct?
Yeah, usually on the front, they'll say, there's always like a little label that will have like the GF little thing on there that says gluten-free on there. And in the back, when you look at the nutrition label, on the bottom will always say contains like all the allergens. So like eggs, shellfish, wheat, all of them will be on there, just so people who have any type of allergies are aware of what is in this food product.
Yeah, well, good information. Sandy, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, somebody you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news in retirement, lifestyle, finance, wellness, tech, so much more in all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives? Check out our latest content. We'll visit our website and our streaming partners like Amazon, Roku, Samsung, and over 100 more. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired,
Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.